I have a stand mixer in my apartment, but I don't use it very often because my apartment's so small, so we have to keep it like up on a shelf. And so every time I do want to bake something like bread or something like meringue, and I'm like, is it worth it? Hey everyone, it's Nia. I'm back with another recipe drop where me and the Test Kitchen team here at Food52 bring you new recipes every week. And today I'm making a Swedish marängsviss with a strawberry shrub. And a marängsviss, it sounds a lot fancier than it is. It's essentially meringue, whipped cream, ice cream, and then today I have the black pepper strawberry shrub. I feel like I've been seeing shrub everywhere so far this season, so I felt like it was the perfect thing to add to this dessert. In my family, we have it a lot on birthdays, so it's very special to me. And yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is make the meringue. I partially measured out my ingredients before, just because I've made this recipe a few times, but I've been using grams every time I make it, and so I wanted to measure it out in actual cups, just in case you don't have a scale at home, I guess. I have 90 grams of confectioner sugar. I also have 90 grams of regular granulated white sugar. This is leftover egg whites from a recipe that I made the other day. So this is not measured out yet, so I'm actually gonna do that right now. With a French meringue, it's usually a 1-to-1 ratio. Ignore the powdered sugar. The 1-to-1 ratio is usually just egg whites and regular sugar, but I am adding powdered sugar to help stabilize the meringue even more. I'm gonna measure out 90 grams. And if you don't have a kitchen scale, that's totally fine. 90 grams is about 3 large egg whites. So with meringue, it's really important that the bowl is clean. It doesn't have any traces of fat in it, because that's gonna prevent it from whipping up as much as you want the meringue to whip up. So you could use white vinegar. I have some lemon juice that I'm gonna use in the meringue recipe. I have more than enough, so I'm actually gonna just use this instead of going to grab vinegar. And don't worry about there being too much vinegar or any vinegar or lemon juice left in the bowl, because there's so little and it kind of just evaporates pretty immediately. I also have the oven preheating to 200 degrees. It's really important that it's on a lower setting to prevent the meringues from getting brown. This helps them to dry out without getting brown, the lower temperature. Okay, so 90 grams of egg whites. And then doing about 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. 1, 2. I'm not gonna add the sugar immediately. I'm gonna add it slowly as the mixer is on. So as soon as the egg white has started to foam, that's when I'm gonna start adding the sugar. You could technically use cold egg whites straight out of the fridge if you have to, but I would recommend letting them sit at room temperature for a little bit, because this is gonna help incorporate air bubbles and it's gonna help it to whip up a lot faster. Okay, I'm gonna add this slowly now. I never buy meringues anymore, but when I used to go to cafes with my mom when I was younger, it was something we used to get a lot. So what the lemon juice does is it helps to stabilize the egg white. It keeps it from collapsing during and after mixing. If you don't have lemon juice, you can also just use regular white vinegar. So now I'm gonna let this whip on high speed until it's super light and fluffy and we have really stiff peaks, probably around 3 to 4 minutes depending on the mixer that you have. This is your best friend here. I'm actually just gonna add a pinch of salt too. Ooh, looks so good. Okay, if you need a good reference shaving cream, you want it to look like shaving cream. It kind of does, right? Yeah. Super stiff peaks, this is exactly what you want. Now, I'm gonna fold in the powdered sugar. So powdered sugar isn't always used in meringue. I'm using powdered sugar here because it helps to stabilize the meringue. It also makes it a little bit more viscous. So again, 90 grams. This is about a heaping 3/4, I would say. So if you don't have a sieve, don't worry about it. It just allows the powdered sugar to mix into the egg whites much more evenly. So I'm using a French meringue here for this recipe. Wow, this is going everywhere. Because I want the meringue to be really crispy and tender. And as I was saying before, French meringue is usually a 1-to-1 ratio of sugar to egg whites. And that's usually the lowest you can go. The more sugar you use, the crispier the meringue will be, but it won't be as melt in your mouth and tender as if you would use a little bit less sugar. So like what I'm doing. The word Swiss meringue or or meringue Swiss, I guess you would say in English, actually comes from a French word called meringue Swiss, and it's spelled S-U-I-S-S-E, I think. But it basically means meringue made with egg whites and sugar whipped together, rather than an Italian Swiss meringue, which is made by melting together egg whites and sugar and then whipping it. So yeah, that's kind of where the Swedes got meringue Swiss from. It's also pretty much a different version of Eton Mess, which is an English version. But the real difference is that an Eton Mess is made with berries and cream, versus a Swedish meringue Swiss is typically made with ice cream, bananas, and chocolate sauce. My version is a little bit different. So obviously it has strawberries in it, and yeah, I love this. Now I'm just folding the powdered sugar into the meringue. I'm trying to avoid breaking too many of the air bubbles because I don't want it to deflate, but I want to make sure to mix it all in so that I don't have any little powdered sugar clumps. Now it's time to pipe. I have this little piping bag, and then I have this tip. I would say this is probably a fourth of an inch. You also don't even have to use one of these if you don't want to. You could literally just scoop the meringue out with 2 spoons if you feel like that's easier. I was trying to decide when I was developing this recipe if I did want it to feel a little bit more organic and do it with spoons, but because the ice cream and the cream are both gonna kind of be like dolloped on there, I thought it would be nice to have a little bit more shape in the meringue. You can see there's a lot of air bubbles in here. So one thing, you can either kind of twist it up top, and you can do like a little helicopter motion. Personally, I don't really feel like it works that well. It's worth a try. I also, sometimes if there's really big ones, I kind of will just work them up to the top. So if you don't have a piping tip, I would just cut maybe just an inch off or 3/4 of an inch off, but since I do have this tip, I'm cutting a bit more. You definitely want to use parchment paper for meringues because you're gonna have a really hard time getting the meringues off if you do it right on the baking sheet, and you definitely don't want to use any fat. I like to make them about 1.5 inches wide maybe. And the way I like to make these is I just hold my piping bag down here, and then I just hold it in place and squeeze until I have the size I want, and then lift up. If you do want to make different sizes, do it on different baking sheets because they're going to require different baking times. Say I wanted to make half of them larger, half of them smaller, I would bake the larger ones for maybe an hour and the smaller ones for like 50 minutes. All right, I'm very sticky, but here are little meringues. These are going to bake at 200 degrees Fahrenheit, about 50 minutes, I would say. And very important that you don't open the oven while they're baking. Oh, we got a pizza oven in there. It's okay. Now I'm gonna move on to the shrub, which I'm excited about. For this shrub, I'm gonna use 1/2 cup of diced strawberries. These are washed, not dried. You don't have to be too particular with how you cut them up. I am just gonna cut them into probably 1/4 inch pieces, I would say. And then I'm gonna also save a bunch of strawberries for assembling too. What a shrub is it's basically a fruit or berry syrup with vinegar. Traditionally, I think it's made with apple cider vinegar, but I'm using balsamic vinegar instead. The deepness of the balsamic would go really nice with the vanilla ice cream and the whipped cream and the strawberries. And then I also add a little bit of black pepper because, I don't know, make it a little fun. It's just enough so that you kind of get that peppery flavor, but it's not overpowering in the slightest. And you really don't need a ton for this recipe. I'm gonna use 1/2 cup of chopped strawberries. And because I'm using balsamic and I don't want it to be too overpowering, I'm actually gonna use 1/4 cup of water and then 1/4 cup of vinegar. So the ratio is a little bit different there. 1/2 cup of granulated white sugar. And then 1/4 cup of the balsamic vinegar. The shrub is really nice. It's most commonly used in cocktails or even just with seltzer water to make kind of like a homemade soda, I guess. You can use it for desserts. It's really good, especially on ice cream, which is what we're doing here. Also gonna add a little pinch of salt. All right, so I'm gonna do about 1/2 teaspoon, and it goes. So I'm gonna bring it to a boil over medium-high heat, and then it's gonna simmer for about 10 minutes until the strawberries are completely broken down, the sugar is dissolved, and it's starting to look pretty syrupy. One thing that's really nice about it is that as the strawberries cook, they kind of become almost candied in a way, which you'll notice. They kind of become a little translucent. You could strain them out, but I like to just add them right onto the dessert. Okay, so this is about done. So you can see it doesn't look very thick. However, if you want a thinner pourable sauce, it should be around 220 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you want a thicker pourable sauce, it should be around 224 degrees Fahrenheit. If you go much higher than that, it's gonna get really thick as it cools, kind of like a jam, and you're not gonna be able to drizzle it over the dessert. I'm gonna go somewhere in between. What is that at? 223? Okay, I think that's good. You can let it cool in the saucepan, but to speed things up, I'm gonna transfer it to another bowl. And obviously the balsamic vinegar is gonna change the color a bit, so it's gonna look a lot more brown and dark than if you use apple cider vinegar. I'm gonna let this sit. I'm probably gonna pop this in the fridge actually for about 10 minutes just to let it cool, just to speed it up while I slice some strawberries. You could slice them into little 4-inch pieces instead. I'm gonna cut it in half. I'm gonna make little wedges instead. So I'm probably gonna cut up about a cup of strawberries. So marängsviss is a really common dessert, especially in the summer, for when you're having people over, for birthdays. I think it's actually one of my grandpa's favorite desserts. And when my grandma makes it for him, she makes it with bananas and chocolate sauce. I feel like that version kind of is almost like a banana split, but with meringue, like a big bowl of banana split. Typically you would serve a marängsviss on a big serving platter or in a big bowl rather than little individual cups, which is what I'm gonna do. It makes it super easy for when you're having people over, if you wanna just throw together a quick dessert. Obviously, this is a little less quick because I'm making homemade meringue. I think the pistachios give a really nice crunch to the dessert. It's nice to have a little bit more texture variety on top. So I'm just coarsely chopping them into a variety of sizes. I want some smaller pieces, and then I'm also gonna leave some a little bit bigger. So these are the little coupes that we're gonna serve them in. They're really cute. I like the variety in color. I think it's really nice. So I actually have a nice little meringue swap here. So you can see they're totally cooled, and I actually haven't removed them. I think when you do take them off, be careful because they do wanna stick to the parchment paper, so you have to kind of peel them off like this. I'm actually really glad I made a swap because I just checked on the meringues in here and they're not looking that great. So that's not what we want.
What happened?
Yeah, they're not looking good. The oven, I realized, was way too high. It was accidentally on like 250. With meringues, they're so sensitive that even just the slightest temperature difference is gonna make a big difference. So you'd rather have the oven be too low than too high. So I'm also gonna whip some cream while I let these sit out for a little bit. So I'm gonna whip about a cup of cream, I'd say. I'm gonna whip this on medium-low speed until we have soft peaks. I've made this mistake a few times before where I walk away and I come back and it's way too over-whipped. So don't do that. Just stay and keep an eye on it. All right, so that's pretty good. Okay, let's assemble. So I'm gonna start with a few meringues on the bottom. This part is really fun. I think it's super interactive, so it's really great if you are having guests over. You can kind of set up a little bar and everybody can do their own. All right, so little ice cream. You don't have to be so precious with this because however you lay it out, it's gonna look really nice. Dollop of whipped cream, another meringue, some more ice cream. Yeah, I don't really have a method to this. I kind of just go. I'm gonna stick some strawberries in there. I get stressed when I'm decorating desserts with ice cream because I don't want it to melt. See, this is kind of fun when you have the small ones. You can place it on top. It looks really pretty, but it's actually, as you can see, it's not too hard to make. As long as you don't have your oven on too of a temperature like I did. You can see now this is pretty thick. Any thicker and it would be pretty hard to drizzle this on top. Okay. Yeah, it's very dark in color, which is nice, I think. Oh, this looks so good. Sprinkle some pistachios right on top. Voila. I'm actually excited to send my grandma a photo of this because I feel like she is the one who makes marängsviss the most out of anyone in my family. I feel like you have to get a bite with everything. A little cream, a little meringue, a little pistachio. So good. Come on. Yeah. Here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this is so beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, you gotta get like a full bite of everything.
Wow. It's crunchy. Wow, this is so good. This is amazing.
Oh, thanks guys. Thanks for coming to be in the video. Thank you for watching this episode of Recipe Drop. If you want the recipe, you can find it in the description below. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.